The table is set for a huge matchup on Saturday between Purdue and the Illinois Illini. Purdue just comes off a loss. Illinois, winners of 8 straight. It's going to be a big one at Mackey Arena.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers and an episode of Locked On Illini for this special Locked On crossover before this big-time matchup that's heading our way on Saturday between the number 4 ranked Purdue Boilermakers, the number 11 ranked Illinois Illini. I'm here today with Sonny Verma of Locked On Illini, and we're talking everything about this matchup. How are you doing today, Sonny? Thank you for joining the show.
Of course, I'm excited. This is a game that I'm sure Illini fans and Purdue fans all kind of circled before the season even started, only because you knew these two teams would be in the position that they are, contending for a Big Ten championship. Both teams come in with the same record within the conference. Obviously, Purdue is reeling a little bit in the sense that they are coming off of a loss, but Illini, well, we've got our own issues at this point trying to navigate the next month without arguably our best player in Kylan Boswell. But it should be a really good matchup at Mackey Arena on Saturday.
I agree. Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about, is this a must-win game? What are some of the storylines between these two teams heading into Saturday's matchup? We'll get into some of the key players, the matchups there on the court, then finish off today's episode with our predictions. So make sure you stick around for that. But I want to jump right into things today. And the reason why I say that this game might be a must-win game largely comes down to the fact, and you mentioned it, that these two teams have the same records as of right now. Second place in the Big Ten, tied with a Michigan, behind Nebraska, who is still undefeated in conference play. And Purdue coming off a loss, Illinois off of 8 straight wins. Like I said, this is going to be a game where I feel like it largely determines where the winner goes and the loser goes, because this is the only time these two teams play each other this year. And for Purdue especially, this is going to be a big momentum game where you head into Indiana, you head into some of these tougher marquee matchups down the road. Illinois is really that first taste of a really good basketball team in the Big Ten that Purdue, they're going to have to beat if they want to get to where they want to get, which is a regular season Big Ten championship. So I'm going to ask you, Sonny, from an Illinois perspective, is this a game you feel like is must win for Illinois' title hopes? Is this a game you feel like is must win for having a good March Madness seed, all of that?
I think it has to be. I mean, if you take a look at the Big Ten Conference this year between Michigan, Purdue, Nebraska, Illinois, Michigan State, it is very top heavy. And there's a real chance that the conference winner is only going to have maybe 3 losses for the entire season. And when you look at it that way, with Nebraska having 0 losses so far, Illinois and Purdue both having 1, if you lose this game on Saturday, your margin of error for the rest of the season becomes very minuscule. For Illinois, again, it's going to be tough because you're playing without Kylan Boswell for the next month, and you're going to be playing Michigan State next week. You're also going to be playing Nebraska upcoming in the schedule. So it's going to be basically all your hard hitters are coming right after one another. Now, you've won 8 in a row. You've won, I think, 6 straight Big Ten games at this point since that Nebraska loss. That Nebraska loss hurts, right? Obviously, now it hurts a little less seeing how good they ended up being. But you lost on a last-second 3-point shot, but you lost that game at home. So now you're going to have to return the favor. You're going to have to go into Lincoln and win that game against Nebraska, which is going to be tough. But obviously the eyes are focused on Purdue just because it's Purdue. Purdue and Illinois have been battling for Big Ten conferences over the last half decade or so, and that's going to be a tough arena to play. Braden Smith, Kylan Boswell, unfortunately, is not going to be there, but it's going to be a tough matchup, and which I'm very much looking forward to.
And we're going to get into all of those players here in just a little bit. But I do want to ask you, just from an overview, what you've seen so far with this Illinois team. For Purdue, starting out Big Ten play, it was pretty flawless. Now, we haven't really had that marquee matchup, but you start out with 7 straight wins going into that West Coast trip, which we knew it was going to be a little bit tough, traveling down to LA and beating both USC and UCLA. But there was a point in there where it felt like Purdue just got a little bit too high on their horse, so to speak. The energy levels just weren't there. And Braden Smith, he was putting up 20 points, 10 assists a game during that stretch. But it felt like come a certain point, the identity that this team had started to build up, dominating in the front court, wasn't there. Trey Kaufman-Renn has struggled as of late. Oscar Clough wasn't the efficient Oscar Clough that we've consistently seen over the course of the year. There were adjustments that needed to be made, and I'm hoping that loss to UCLA may be a wake-up call going into this big game against Illinois. Whether that happens or not, that's going to be on the players to decide. But from an Illinois perspective, you heard how Purdue's going into this game. How are the Illini going into this game? You got a win streak going, but has it been as pretty as the record suggests?
I mean, it's interesting you say that. For Illinois, it's almost kind of the opposite. Illinois lost 3 games very early in the season, but when you take a look at the 3 teams you lost to, you're talking about Alabama, UConn, and Nebraska, 3 of the best teams in the country. But because of that, Illinois has kind of been out of the spotlight in a lot of ways, and they've really turned things around in this last 8-game win streak. I believe at the end of the Nebraska game, their defensive efficiency rating was in the 40s. Well, that shot up to, it was as high as 19 just a couple days ago. On the offensive side, they're now the number 1 team via KenPom when it comes to offensive efficiency. They seemingly have kind of, the only way I can describe it, Nick, is you may have a better player on your basketball team, but there's not any team in the country. And I'm not talking about Purdue necessarily. I'm talking about any team in the country that has a better 7th guy, that has a better 8th guy on the basketball team. You can have Andrej Stojaković score 7 points as he did in the previous game. And then last night against Maryland goes off for 30 points. And there's a lot of players on this Illini roster that can do that. You've got the steady force that is Keaton Wagler. But who's going to be the second best player on the basketball team on any given game? You don't know. It could be David Mirković. It could be Andrej Stojaković. It could be Tomislav Ivišić. It could be his twin brother, Zvonimir Ivišić. This team just has so many weapons that being the number 1 ranked team offensively on KenPom is not by accident. It's not by coincidence. They're just really good when it comes to that. And the defensive side, that's what's really picked up. I don't know what adjustments have been made, but again, shooting up about 25 points since this win streak started shows that the adjustments have been made and the adjustments are working.
I actually think that these teams are a lot more similar than people maybe give it credit when you talk about the experience that Illinois has with just a ton of Euro guys that have gotten a lot of reps over the years. Now, Purdue a little bit different because they don't have those European guys, but we do have experience in terms of retention. Trey Kaufman-Renn, Braden, Fletcher, all those seniors on the squad. So it's a lot more similar. And then when you look at those numbers, especially in KenPom, Purdue, they've held that number 1 ranking until Illinois. They've stretched together some wins. So I think Purdue is number 2 on offense, 18 on defense. Illinois 1 and 22 on defense the last time I checked. But these teams are very similar in terms of metrics. But for my key for Purdue, if Purdue is going to win this game, and I talked about this on yesterday's show, it's going to be with that front court. The stat that I really want to see from this game in Purdue is that points in the paint. And when you're facing off against the Ivišić, when you're facing off against that front court that Illinois does have, maybe that's tough, but that should be the standard. That should be the identity that this team has built. We need some help around Braden Smith. So I'm going to say Purdue needs to at least outscore Illinois in the points in the paint in this game. But I want to see them get that up to as much as like 40 points in this game. That's where I feel comfortable with Purdue. Points in the paint is going to be big. That front court is going to be incredibly important for Purdue. Before we get into these players, what is your key for Illinois? What's one stat or just one thing you could throw out there that says, if Illinois is able to do this, I feel comfortable with how the Illini win this game in Mackey Arena?
I would probably say take a look at the rebounding battle. It's by design that Illinois is one of the biggest teams. I think they are the biggest team in college basketball, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. But rebounding is a huge reason why Illinois is as efficient as they are. If you take a look at the 3-point percentages on our basketball team, no one really jumps out at you. But the thing is, we have second and third opportunities a lot of the time with our offensive rebounding. David Mirković has been a monster when it comes up to getting those offensive boards. So I think the offensive rebounding is what I'm kind of going to look at. The way these teams are kind of designed. I mean, I'll be honest, if you guys get 40 points in the paint, I think Purdue wins on Saturday. Illinois' defense is designed to basically force you to take mid-range shots, which could be troublesome because Purdue is one of the teams that actually can make mid-range shots all game long. So in a lot of ways, Illinois might be going into one of Purdue's strengths. But we'll kind of see what happens. But if Illinois is making their three-point shots, and even if they're shooting 35%, but they're getting second and third opportunities, that's how Illinois tends to. I mean, if you watch Illinois games, it can be tied with 10 minutes left. You blink, and Illinois has gone on a 20-2 run. It can happen that quickly with this offense. And so for me, rebounding is the key. It's been the mindset all season long. It's the only thing Brad Underwood talks about in post-game press conferences. All he tells his team to do is rebound the basketball. And I don't think there's a game more important to do that than Saturday.
So you found out how both of these teams win this game, but let's take a look at the players. That's coming up here next on this Locked On crossover. But first, FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. And there's a couple big games this weekend. Sonny, do you have a preference in who's playing these games this weekend? Do you have a winner?
Well, I just have a winner for our game, but I'll save that one for the last segment.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Well, I got the Seahawks winning this one. I probably have the Patriots winning too. If you have a hunch about these NFL games going on this weekend, you can make the picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. It's time to get into some players, time to get into some matchups for this big number 4 versus number 11 ranked game on Saturday in Mackey Arena. And Sonny, when I was looking at this Illinois team, just trying to scout what they would have to offer on Saturday, the thing that really caught my eyes was just the amount of double-figure scores, the amount of depth that this team has to offer. Can you give me a little bit of your insight into what Purdue fans can expect? Not necessarily who is most expected to hurt us, but who you think could be that guy, be that X factor that steps up on Saturday.
Yeah, I kind of hinted into that in that first segment. You just never know. Keaton Wagler. Keaton Wagler, like the story, basically everyone has heard it at this point. He was ranked in the 200s, and yet he's turned out to be one of a complete godsend, a guy who can probably at the end of the year, he's been projected for the lottery in the upcoming NBA draft. You talk about, look, this team had Andrej Stojaković and Will Riley last year, two of the highest rated recruits that we've had in a very, very long time. Keaton Wagler is better than both of those guys. He has all the strengths of Kasparis, but he doesn't have the turnovers. He's the type of kid who doesn't get rattled by anything. He hasn't all season long. He had a bad game yesterday, against Maryland, and he finished with, I think, 13, 8, and 7 or something along those lines. Like, he's just a very consistent player. But then when you talk about the Robin to Keaton's Batman, it can be anybody. Andrej had 30 points against Maryland. It can be Zvonimir Ivišić, who had 18 points against Minnesota. It can be Tommy Ivišić, who's struggled at the beginning of the season, but has had 3 really strong games in a row. But then you also have guys like Jake Davis, who is now going to be starting for the Illini now that Kylan is gone. He had 12 points, hit 4 of 6 from three-point land. I've said this on Locked On Illini. I've said this a lot, so my everydayers will certainly know when I have heard me say this before. Opposing defensive coordinators, they can't sleep when Illinois is on the schedule because if you watch their tape, you just don't know who you're supposed to game plan against. And so it's one of those situations where who knows? It could be Tommy. It could be Big Z. Again, I'm kind of looking forward to the big man matchup just like you, but I think the number one matchup I'm looking forward to seeing is who guards Braden. Because for me, it was clear-cut. Kylan Boswell, going to put him up against Braden Smith, and let's see what happens. But now, with Kylan out, is it Andrej Stojaković? Look, Stojaković not only scored 30 against Maryland, but he held David Quaid to 15 points on 5 of 15 shooting against Maryland on Wednesday night. Now, Quaid had 70-plus points in his previous couple of Big Ten games. Stojaković, he's come here to play defense. Brad Underwood has been very clear about that. He likes his defensive potential. But Coit and Braden Smith are a completely different level. And so that's the key matchup for me. What does Illinois do? How do they adapt their strategy? Because clearly Kylan would have been the number 1A option to go up against Braden. Who is 1B?
Yeah, and I think Kylan Boswell being out of this game is absolutely huge for Purdue's hopes here. And the reason why I say that specifically is because the defensive strategy so far this year for Purdue has been, so to speak, cut the head off the snake, take away other teams' leading scorers or leading options, and then force them to play through somebody else. But when you look at this Illinois team, it's not really a scenario where you're able to do that because they'll find someone else that can score the ball. And that's something that we've seen in Purdue's losses, not necessarily against UCLA, where Donovan Dent, who hasn't been great all year, just shows up for a crazy double-double, but against a team like Iowa State, where they have tons of options out there. We kind of ran into that at home in Mackey Arena. That's why I'm a little bit scared about this matchup on the defensive side of the ball in terms of just trying to limit some of Illinois' production. But in terms of Keaton Wagler, who is you guys' leading scorer right now, right around 16 points per game, I believe CJ Cox is going to be big in terms of trying to guard him because he's our best point of attack defender right now. We've seen that his role is kind of just be that off-ball guard who can stop other teams' guards in that backcourt. And hopefully CJ is able to play a big role for us in this game. But what I think is even more important out of that backcourt is Fletcher Loyer. Fletcher Loyer is going to be so important. His consistency, his efficiency rather, is going to be really important in this game because we just haven't seen that as of late. The role that he has typically played in terms of being that three scorer on offense where he can make a three, get you that momentum, and then play good enough defense, that hasn't been there this year. He hasn't been able to make the three ball at the high level. And then on the defensive side, he's been a bit of a liability where these stronger, more athletic wings are able to get around him. He often gets into foul trouble and then can't stay on the court. So that's big for Purdue. What Fletcher Loyer does ultimately probably determines what Purdue does in this game. And I hate to say that. I hate to say that one guy is going to be the variable, but as of late, he has been that. When he's been off, Purdue hasn't been as good. But that's kind of it for the starting lineups. We talked about how that front court is going to be huge in terms of determining that game, how the back court is going to be a little bit interesting with Kylan Boswell out, that Braden Smith matchup. But I want to ask you about the bench. I want to ask you about the depth, and it's something I love to talk about for Purdue. They haven't been as hot for us as of late, but we have a lot of depth. But I want to ask you first, what does Illinois kind of bring out off that bench? What can we expect in terms of the depth the Illini have to offer?
Well, now that it looks like Jake Davis has taken over the role of Kylan Boswell, I guess you can take him off of the bench and into the starting lineup role. But when you think about the bench, it first and foremost starts with Zvonimir Ivišić, who is the twin brother of Tomislav. He's played for Kentucky, he's played for Arkansas, but he's having a fantastic year. Zvonimir's a kid who would be starting for 80% of college basketball right now. Maybe there's an argument for even higher than that. We've never had a shot blocker like we have with Big Z. I think he's going to be the key because in a lot of ways, he's kind of the personality of this basketball team. Against Maryland was very chippy, was very physical with the Illini, and Big Z kind of responded back, and he got 2 flagrant fouls called by himself. And at first, I was irked by it. I was like, hey, Zvonimir's getting triggered. But then I realized that, this team kind of needs that. Over the years, there's a lot of labels that have been put on this Illini basketball program, and one of them has been that they're kind of soft. Big Z, I think, right now has come in and imposed a different type of personality. He's a guy, again, 7'2". He blocks shots at a very high rate. He can step back and hit 3-pointers. He actually hardly shoots 2-pointers, but when he does, it's right next to the rim, and they tend to be easy buckets. You have a guy like Ben Hummerkaus, who's kind of like the consummate role player. He's a lightning rod when you really talk to Illini fans about him. He came in last year as supposed to be the best 3-point shooter that Brad Underwood ever had. Unfortunately, the 3-point shot really has never fallen while he's wearing an orange and blue jersey. But this year, he's really stepped it up in just knowing where to be, playing really solid defense. And he's clearly a guy that Brad Underwood trusts at this point. You have other players like Mihailo Petrovic, who a lot of Illini fans want more minutes of. He was top 10, I believe, in the Adriatic League for the MVP. His play style is just so different compared to what this how this offense runs. So he hasn't really gotten too many minutes this year. But I think those guys are the main ones. As the season has progressed, Brad has kind of cut short this rotation more and more. Like now we're looking at maybe 8 guys, especially with Kylan out. You're shortening it even more aggressively. But any of those 8 guys can pop off for double figures, and that's what makes this team as dangerous as it is.
Let me tell you the matchup I can't wait to see off this bench. It's 7'4" Daniel Jacobson versus 7'2" Zvonimir Ivišić. I always talk about how Purdue has such a luxury of bringing a 7-footer off their bench to replace Oscar Clough. Illinois is one of those rare teams that has that same luxury, the same ability to have a guy like that off the bench. So I think that's going to be absolutely huge. In terms of what Purdue does offer outside of 7'4" Daniel Jacobson, who is a great rim protector in his own right, we have Jack Benner, redshirt freshman, who has really stepped up as of late. He can really change games with his three-point shot, made like 11 in a row at one point in this season. So he's really good, trying to carve out a role for himself. Jakari Harris is another guy who I thought was going to be better, take a bigger step in his sophomore year, but so far this year, he just hasn't done that. Now, I think he's very valuable as a big body on defense who can play that wing, guard the wings that I talked about. Fletcher Loyer maybe not being able to guard. That's what he offers, but on the offensive side of the ball, when you struggle, it's hard to keep you on the floor. That's just the nature of college basketball. If you're not producing on both sides, Matt Painter is probably going to put you on the bench, and that's what Jakari Harris has seen so far this year. And then ultimately, I do think that the bench is going to be huge for this game. Omer Meyer has been a guy that comes over from Tel Aviv in Israel. This is his freshman year, but has played a lot of EuroLeague basketball, still trying to get adjusted to the pace of college basketball. He's been a guy that could be a baller for Purdue, but we just haven't seen it quite yet. In terms of the benches, I think that Illinois' bench has a lot more clarity of what they want to be. I do think that Purdue's bench, it has a ton of potential, but a lot of question marks right now. So ultimately, we talked about the matchups. We talked about the bench, all the players, but now it's time for us to get into our final predictions. That's going to be on the other side here next on Locked On Crossover.
Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today.
All right, Sonny. So final segment here of this Locked On crossover between Locked On Boilermakers, Locked On Illini, and we're going to get into some predictions. But before we do, I want to ask you just straight up, how does Illinois win this game?
Illinois wins this game because Andrej Stojaković wins this game. This is a question I actually have for you, Nick. I wish I'd gotten to it in the previous segment. It slipped my mind. If you look at the size difference between these two teams, in particular in the backcourt, it's very noticeable. You're talking about 6'6" for us, 6 foot for you guys. And then 6'6" is our 2 guard. Again, 6'3", and then our small forwards is 6'7". Yours is 6'4". Illinois can, in a lot of ways, impose their size on the Boilermakers. The question I have for you, which I can't figure out, and you being a Purdue expert, maybe you can answer it for me. Who do you think is going to be taking on the responsibility of guarding a guy like Andrej Stojaković, a guy who has NBA pedigree, who can put his head down, attack the rim? We haven't had that sort of skill since Terrence Shannon Jr. from a couple seasons ago. When I look at this Purdue team, you guys are very well-rounded. Enough has been said about TKR, Braden Smith. But on the defensive end, I just don't know who's going to be the guy to step up and take on Stojaković. Who do you think that's going to be?
Honestly, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
really tough matchup for Purdue. I don't think that it will be Fletcher Loyer. And I'm a little bit confused about what Painter is going to do with Fletch in this game, just because there is so much size. And I don't want to harp on him too much because he has struggled as of late, but he offers a lot of value, kind of being that on-court coach for us. I know that wasn't the answer to your question, but in terms of who is going to guard Stojaković, I talked earlier about how CJ Cox may pick up Keaton Wagler. I still think that could be something that happens in terms of that point of attack if you need to stop Wagler. But I could also see CJ playing off of Stojaković. He's probably going to be our best defender, although he is a little bit undersized. And then putting Braden on Wagler at times. Yes, Braden Smith isn't the best defender, but he's gritty. He can definitely play physical on the defensive side of the ball, and he's been better as of late on the defensive side. So I don't know if there's necessarily a textbook or like an A+ answer as to how you stop Stojaković or who goes on Stojaković. I just think there's going to be a lot of different guys thrown on him, whether that's a Jakari Harris off the bench who provides a little bit of size, whether that's CJ Cox to start out, whether you even potentially step up Trey Kaufman-Wren and see if he can get quick enough laterally to stop Stojaković. Sorry, I was fumbling on my words there. But to your question, I just don't know if there's a set player that's going to be able to stop Stojaković. We're going to have to probably throw quite a few different guys at him. We talked about that Braden Smith matchup earlier in the show, how you think that Braden Smith is going to be limited. And you also talked about how that mid-range is what Illinois wants to force you to. But for Braden, that's kind of been his forte, is getting to that mid-range fadeaway, scoring, and then opening up those passing lanes that kind of go when you have to collapse that defense onto Braden's shot. So I know you talked about the matchups, who's going to be on Braden, but how do you think Illinois stops Braden Smith in this game?
I think they're going to, again, you're not going to stop Braden. I think we've seen enough game tape on Braden and track record to know that you're not going to stop Braden, but to limit him. I think basically Illinois' philosophy is, if you take a look, they only commit 12 personal fouls a game, which is also one of the lowest in the entire country. It's one thing I've noticed, a trend, is after every single game, people tend to notice the foul call discrepancies between the two teams. And the thing is, I'm just letting Purdue fans know right off the bat, Illinois just doesn't foul. I think it's a philosophy at this point, basically, in particular with the mid-range game. They're going to dare you to keep making the mid-range shot the least efficient shot in basketball for 40 straight minutes. And so Braden, it gets him vulnerable. Like, we've had Bryce Thornton, we've had Sanford from Nebraska. We've had players go off on Illinois just simply because they're on a hot streak and Illinois will give them particular areas of the court, but no one has been able to sustain it for 40 minutes. I think Stojaković is going to take on that responsibility of just making life tough for Braden. Braden, I don't know if he alone is going to beat Illinois, just because Illinois is just loaded with so many guys on the offensive side. But what Stojakovic's game plan, I think, is going to be is don't let another guy step up. Because if two guys are able to step up against this Illinois team, then all of a sudden you see more of the vulnerabilities stick out.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. Braden Smith by himself is not going to be able to beat Illinois. And that's something I've said over and over and over again, not just about Illinois, but until guys start to step up, until these leaders start to step up around Braden Smith, we're not going to be able to reach the ceiling that fans, the expectations have been set for this team. And that's something that's going to be extremely key for Purdue in this game. And that's why I kind of have this one as a pick 'em. I've really been debating with which way to go here. And the one thing that I just keep sticking with is Purdue's ability to bounce back in these type of spots where you lose to a UCLA and you use that as a wake-up call. Now, when you're on that winning streak, it feels like Purdue got a little bit complacent. They weren't finishing off these games, didn't have their foot on the pedal for 40 straight minutes against Illinois at home in a game that we labeled as must win. I don't view that as the case. I just think that this team, with all the experience they have, yes, there are some mismatches in terms of physicality, in terms of size. I think this game comes down to one or two possessions. I'm so serious. This is going to be a game that ends in the 40th minute. I just don't know which way. I'm going to say Purdue for the sake of, I feel like these guys have been through enough, losing in the first round of March Madness, making it to the national championship and falling just short. This Illinois game is the first big step in terms of getting back there. So I'm going to say they win by just a little bit. 82-80 is my final prediction. Goes right down to the wire. Maybe a game winner, maybe not. We'll see. Sonny, what's your projection?
I mean, I love that, and I think you're right. Quite honestly, a week ago, I probably would have predicted Illinois to win this game just because Purdue was playing as well as it was. But I can't believe I would even say that because I never trust an Illinois team to go into Mackey and escape with the victory. But this team is just playing so well. But in the last couple of days, a lot of those circumstances have changed, right? Purdue lost to UCLA. So, they're coming back home and they're going to be hungry. Illinois now without Kylan Boswell, I would have felt a lot more comfortable knowing Kylan Boswell was going to chase Braden Smith around. And because he's not there, there's just a lot of question marks for me. I think you're exactly right. This is a coin flip game. I would not be surprised with either team winning on Saturday. But if I had to be honest with myself, I think Purdue probably pulls it off. I see 88-82. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game just because Joe Jackson put it perfectly. Both of these offenses are designed to beat the other's defense. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'll give the edge to the Purdue Boilermakers, 88-82.
Saturday is definitely going to be a fun game, and we appreciate you guys joining us today on this Locked On crossover. Sonny, you can check him out. Or actually, Sonny, you tell them where they can check you out. Tell the Purdue fans.
Absolutely. If you're looking to kind of check in on your rival every now and then, you can follow me at Locked On Illini. Same thing that Nick does right here. I also host Talk Illini for On3, the network over there. And otherwise, it's a fun rivalry. Purdue fans always seem to find themselves in my comment sections after these games. And, I don't mind. That's what makes college sports fun.
All right. You can check me out. Same places, Locked On Boilermakers, Nick Arvin Sports on X, anywhere, Locked On Boilermakers, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So thank you guys once again for joining the show. Sonny, I always say boiler up, hammer down, but I want to be inclusive on these crossovers to end off the show. Do you have any final words?
ILL.
Okay. But for me, as always, boiler up, hammer down.
ILL.